I would say probably they were going to come out with a veteran receiver for depth. Keelan Cole's contract's up. They're probably going to want to get depth at running back. Tevin Coleman is up, I think. Tight end is, to me, it's just going to be the draft. Certainly, there's no doubt that they'll draft a tight end. Now, do you want to go sign a veteran? Sure. They need depth there as well. But if my Jets' wish list for free agency would to come out with probably a tight end to help the quarterback, a veteran receiver, get some depth. They need some depth. You can never have enough depth at wide receiver. Get an edge rusher, which is going to be hard because it's not very deep there. Get a corner. Need some depth there in competition. This would be some of them, I would say, if I had a wish list.
Yeah, I think positions probably is the place to start. I think that wide receiver and tight end on offense strike me as spots where, depending on how some things internally shake out, could be areas of potential need for the Jets. Interesting wide receiver group. I think some of the players that we're discussing are going to be franchise tag candidates. And then also, interestingly, you've got 3 top wide receivers in Chris Godwin and Odell Beckham Jr. and Michael Gallup that are all coming off of ACL tears. So the market is not going to be entirely impacted for them by that, but it's maybe one of those 3 says, I might take a 1-year deal as opposed to a multi-year deal because I want to get back to full strength and prove that over the course of a full season I can be even more impactful than you might think I can be because of the ACL tear. But the wide receiver group is good. I think more perimeter-type wide receivers for the Jets as opposed to a slot receiver. Tight end market will be interesting this offseason. There are a lot of names, a lot of them, whether it's a guy like Dalton Schultz from the Cowboys at a breakout season, or Zach Ertz, a veteran guy from the Arizona Cardinals, or whether you've got a guy like Mike Gesicki who may or may not be tagged by the Dolphins. And Gesicki is really a big slot receiver. He's a tight end by position, but plays sort of a big slot receiver for impact. But you've got a lot of guys that tight end spot. Very, very deep group this year that I think will produce, 4 or 5 legitimate contracts this offseason.
Well, I think certainly upgrading the offensive line is an obvious need, right? And Joe Douglas believes in building a team from the inside out. I don't know if someone like a Teron Armstead makes sense for them or not, but I certainly think maybe a Bradley Bozeman from the Ravens as coming in at center if they want to do something differently with Connor McGovern. If they want to do a Brandon Scher for somebody like that to come in and add real sort of bite and veteran leadership and add a little bit of an edge to that group, Certainly there seems to be some money to spend and some cap room, but yes, they need blue chip players in a multitude of areas. There's no doubt about that. But I really feel like solidifying that offensive line and doing it with a combination of draft capital for the long haul, but maybe some veterans who can come in there and kind of change that culture a little bit. I think it's in order.
I mean, one, the salary cap's a big part of it. I think, more and more teams, they want to be, I don't want to say frugal, but they want to, get their bang for their buck. I think Chris Ballard has done a great job for the Indianapolis Colts with guys that they've signed. Or if you elect to sign a blockbuster guy, I think the needs are there on the offensive line. Do you want a veteran offensive line to protect a young quarterback? That's kind of the route Buffalo went. If you look at their 5 starters, 4 of them were free agents that they signed there. So maybe the veteran group, and then just let Mekhi Becton continue to develop and get better. But they went the veteran route and then surrounded their young quarterback with the talented players that they did. Made the trade for Diggs, obviously coming in. You have some other young talented players, but I think it is a lot about the quarterback and really getting the support staff around him or the supporting group around him to really help him out.
I think everything this offseason, free agency and the draft, has to be about putting pieces around the quarterback. You've got the young quarterback, and I think we've seen the formula. I don't want to say they're going to the Super Bowl next year, but like you saw what the Cincinnati Bengals did. Like, you get the young quarterback, and then you start putting pieces. So I think that's what you have to do. I think you need to protect him, obviously. You need some defensive help, maybe a pass rusher, and then you need some weapons, more weapons for him. You've got to just start putting pieces around him. They've got the capital to do it, both in free agency and the draft. I'm not necessarily sure that they need to be doing like the big splash free agency kind of signings, but I think you sort of need the nuts and bolts of the rosters kind of guy.
Well, what do you need? You need offensive linemen, you need pass rushers, right? So the pass rush group, it depends on how you see guys, how much you want to invest in them. I think a guy like Chandler Jones probably still has situational play left in him. You got to have a personality and temperament for him. He's had some issues, but he still can rush the passer. Then on the offensive line, Teron Armstead's there. Brandon Sheriff is there. There's plenty of guys. Ryan Jensen's there. So there's a couple teams like Cincinnati that are trying to fortify their line as well. So there's going to be competition for those guys. But the best news for you guys is that this draft is loaded, I think, in the two positions. If I were at the Jets still, we'd be looking at offensive line and pass rushers. So it works out really nicely for you guys to repair some of your issues.